Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I can hear you.
Great. Okay, good. So this chapter is called The Dinner Party. They finally yanked me off the medication that they had put me on, the one that was making me so sick, restless, and anxious. It was destroying me quickly, and I was not myself. Honestly, I don't know why they took me off the medication, perhaps to give me some degree of false hope, but whatever the reason, I am off the medication.
Phoenix, I'm sorry to interrupt, but are we still live? Because my live counter is not counting anymore.
Yeah, mine is.
Oh, no, there it goes. Okay, it was just a glitch. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. See, we weren't reading into the void. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Phoenix.
No, you're good. You're good.
Good.
No, I'm excited to read this.
Me too.
Okay, yeah. And I was not myself. Honestly, I don't know why they took me off of the medication, perhaps to give me some degree of false hope, but whatever the reason, I am off the medication and I've had a couple days to get better. My memory is not as sharp as it was. I don't know if that was the medication or the stress surrounding me or both. It seems that everything that I want to believe is false. It isn't real, it doesn't represent anything actual, and I am making all of this up. It makes more sense to say that I have been in Phoenix's world and that I want to go back, that I can go back, but all of that just seems like false hope, something that I tell myself because I need to escape. Basically, my world has been cheated more than it ever has been before, and I know that Stryker is the reason for that. Stryker is ahead of you. I am relaxing in bed, letting myself rest, and doing my best to hang in there. Outside, it is dark and it is late, but still somewhat early compared to midnight. It is a weird effect. It's a weird time for me to be in the hospital because I'm trying to sleep and rest, yet there is still a lot of action and busyness happening around me, with other patients, with the psych techs, and with my general anxiety about everything boiling over. The pandemic. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. But I realize that I am a little bit hungry. My stomach is growling at me like a frustrated dog. That is when I suddenly hear a knock at my door. I look up and I see Mercury standing at the doorway. Hello, he tells me, and I know that he is already speaking in code with his gestures and his words. I have an invitation for you. He really knows things. I don't say anything so as not to overemphasize his secrecy, but he is as plain as day, holding a golden envelope. He walks up to me and says, "Dinner will be served. You are invited to have supper with Stryker right here in the hospital." He hands me the gold envelope and I open it to pull out a golden invitation. "Dear Dark Kid, you are invited to a dinner with Stryker. No need to RSVP. Happening now in the day room. You won't want to miss this historic event." I look up and I see that Mercury is gone. This is also very strange to me. Why would Stryker want to confront me in the hospital when he is doing so good orchestrating all of this behind the scenes? I don't understand what Stryker is playing at. My guess is he wants to rub it in and really emphasize how much in control he is of the situation. The pandemic is outside, my mental illness, sickness, suicide. But I don't want to shirk my duty of confronting these forces, so I set the invitation down on the desk and I head towards the day room. All of this is so strange. I open the door to the day room and I see something that I didn't expect. It is like being in a very, very nice restaurant. The lights are turned low, there is a candle on the table, and the table itself has a tablecloth, the color of dark red, almost a bloody violet. Stryker is sitting there at the table, and there is bread there in a basket, as well as some oil and vinegar in a small dish. "Dark Kid," Stryker says enthusiastically. He gets up to greet me and to bring me to the table. "Come sit with me." He wants you to feel special, so you do what he wants. I'm confused by all of this. I don't understand what he is playing at. I see that there is wine at the table as well. "Would you like some dark red wine?" he asks me, pouring me a glass. I shake my head, but he pours it for me anyway and sits down on the table. I'm excited for this dinner. We can negotiate, talk business, get everything back on track. He is really doing this. It is strange, but it is out of my control. I know that all of this is an act, reverse psychology. All of this is out of my control. In fact, all of this feels so strange because it feels like theater, like smoke and mirrors, like a magic trick. I don't know what he wants. I am practically giving it to him by being ripped out of Phoenix's world, by being stuck in the mental hospital, by almost committing suicide, by not speaking out. "What do you want from me?" I say, sitting down, cautious yet sharp with anger. "Well, of course, I want you to have a nice meal," he tells me, and I see that there is silverware on our table, forks, timed like a weapon, spoons, a steak knife, a big, sharp, jagged steak knife, which could do so much damage if I took it and stabbed Stryker, or if he stabbed me. He wants this to be ugly. He's teasing violence. "You know that you look out for number one. You know you have to look out for number one, he tells me, so that's what I'm doing. That makes me angry in a way that I can't immediately identify. I say, why is Mercury doing the grunt work? Mercury is just a dumb, stupid, crazy kid trapped in the mental hospital for his incurable condition, Stryker says easily. A Roman god made to be a slave. Stryker laughs. Fancy that, huh? A bit tragic, really, but some people are so crazy that they have no potential, they have no purpose, nothing that they can do in this world or contribute to except to please their rulers, the Roman kings. Stryker smiles at me easily. I know you don't like that. I know you want everything to be fair, whatever that means. And you want everything to be just fine and dandy, like candy. But now, Dark Kid, I'm watching you and everything you do. Was your pandemic not enough? I asked Stryker coldly. No, it wasn't. The pandemic is child's play compared to what I really want to do, Stryker says easily. I'm telling you, Dark Kid, you don't want to cross my path anymore. You hurt yourself more and more by confronting me. We shouldn't be having this dinner party, yet here we are, because you misbehave. He pauses, looking at me curiously. But why don't we just eat some bread? I am not hungry, especially at 10 o'clock at night. In fact, the idea of eating food with Stryker makes me a little bit nauseated. Do you think I'm going to stay here? I asked Stryker. Do you think I'm going to stay locked up in a mental hospital? I know that I can find my escape. I know what to do. Taking a sip of wine, Stryker says, yes, freeing Phoenix from the hospital and all of that, and yet you still claim to know where Phoenix is. Stryker smiles at me maliciously. But I don't need Phoenix to be able to achieve what I want. You think you're so tough talking to the Snake Angel and Phoenix, but you are oblivious. But what is it that you want? I asked Stryker, poised like an acrobat, choreographing a scene with a sharp knife. This elaborate setup is not going to fool me. Stryker takes another sip of wine. You supposedly see past appearances, but you don't understand what the world really is. You don't see how dangerous it is to try and control other worlds. You don't even understand your own world. You are breaking these worlds. I understand it enough, I say, and I am beginning to feel something rather pleasant. Brazen. Arrogance. I say, I know that I can beat you, Stryker. I can beat you like Phoenix beating the bad guy. I smile at Stryker and I am not worried. I cannot let myself be worried right now. You're just an older man looking for attention, but you think that's the way that it's going to stay, Stryker? Stryker is a little bit caught off guard by my sudden resistance, but he smiles at me coolly, heatedly, and says, I think we've got plenty of time to be on the same page here. But let's eat dinner. At this moment, Mercury walks into the day room with 2 plates of food. On the plates are a medium steak and some roasted vegetables. Dinner is served, Stryker says enthusiastically. The way he says this makes it sound like this is less of a dinner party and more of a foray and excursion into death, dying, and disease. Stryker doesn't actually want the steaks. This is instead a metaphor for his deeper and wilder ambitions, his understanding of reality as containing death and decay. And all of this is an act, mere theater. The food may as well be plastic. I myself am not hungry, and I don't really want steak as a vegetarian. This is so strange. Thank you, Mercury, Stryker says almost sarcastically, yet pretending that he actually cares. You're welcome, sir, Mercury says flatly. I think about the letter that Mercury gave me. He is knowledgeable. He is not some servant boy who doesn't know anything about the world or what is going on. He is in fact a keen observer of everything that is happening around us. And I think that this is important in general for me to keep in mind. Things are not what they seem. Well, are you going to eat? Stryker asks me in the strange drama that we are in. Why can't Mercury get some bread? I ask. Were you going to eat it all? I say sarcastically. Stryker looks at me carefully. Yes, I did just challenge him, but I know that Stryker knows that I will do this because I must. I don't want any bread, Mercury says. Well, the boy here says that you need some bread, Stryker says to Mercury, and he says this menacingly. In one tense moment, I wonder if I said too much, arrogantly taunting Stryker. Mercury naturally is doubtful about taking any bread, but Stryker encourages him anyway. Get some bread, boy. Even dogs have to eat. Mercury manages to take a little bit of the bread. He eats it very quickly and is about to leave when Stryker says, I know you two want to try to communicate. Don't even bother. I will interfere. I know what you two talk about. Mercury nods his head and then he leaves. He's bluffing. I continue to observe all of this. I watch as Mercury leaves the room, and then Stryker says, anyway, my business is with you, Dark Kid, not my slave. I guess you like intimidating other kids, I say. I know that you don't want steak, you just want the metaphor of violence and dominance. You want to take a steak knife and stab me right now, but you won't because you don't want too much blood on your fancy clothes. Very smart of you to say, Stryker says, and he slowly picks up the knife. He points it at me. Stabbing you is not above anything that I could do, though. I could stab you, of course. But what's your end goal? I ask. He It's not like you even know. Your goal is to resist me, okay? But there are other heroes out there to torment yourself with. No, Dark Kid, you are wrong. I am essentially several steps ahead of you, because you aren't even aware what you did to yourself whenever the germ was inside of your mind, and it made you question yourself in a way that you already did, and then you didn't want to live. You didn't want to live at all. I know that you want to hurt Mercury. That is why you are so kind to him. You don't seem to know yourself, know what you represent, and I don't take any issue with stabbing you in the dark or stabbing you in the back. You know what I'm saying, Dark Kid? Despite myself, I smile a little bit. Stryker hesitates a moment, and I see for a moment fear. I say, I can do death and darkness, Stryker. You think that I don't have any experience with these things, but I know the mind longs to understand horror, the horrors of our world and the horrors of existence itself, madness, existence, pain, agony. There's a lot of existential fear, and there's also cosmic terror, war, famine, plague. There are different ways you can slice it up, whether a little bit more localized or something that makes your mind explode, but it's all the same thing, and that's my home. You really want to go there, don't you? Stryker says, and he almost sounds impressed. I think that I really want to see you burn for what you have done to me and to my world. I say, you have hurt some of the most beautiful things that I hold dear to me, not just the people on my planet, but also my friends, my really close friends like the Light Kid, like Phoenix, like Mercury. I don't like it. And smiling a little bit to show the absurdity of all of this, I pick up the steak knife. I could stab him, but I won't. Stryker seems to question himself again, a little bit caught off guard by my brazen, but he quickly gets himself together and says, I wasn't going to eat everything. I was going to save some for the dogs like Mercury. Yet he's afraid of something. He knows I know. He knows that I can challenge him. But what is he afraid of about me? I am still holding my knife as a weapon, my bluff. I could stab him if I wanted. Stryker knows he could stab me easily if he wanted, except it wouldn't really be that easy for either of us. I have my code of honor and nonviolence, and Stryker doesn't want to kill a useful tool in his shed. So, a little bit anticlimactic, I take the steak knife and I cut a piece of the steak. I am vegetarian, so I don't eat any of it. I just pretend that I will, to show that I am willing to swallow the blood and the meat. The violence represents what's really here. Stryker wants me to devour hell. Go ahead, Stryker says. Do you think I poisoned it, or are you just indifferent to steak? Calling the bluff, I take a bite of the steak. It feels like death. In fact, it doesn't even taste good. I'm not hungry. I don't want the feast in the day room with Stryker. I don't want the feast with anyone who wants to hurt the people around me. But this is how I assert that I can experience death and understand it. I say, I called your bluff. I ate a piece of the steak to show you I'm not afraid if you poison me, and I'm still alive. Stryker says, there is more than poisoned steak for you in the future, Dark Kid, if you are ready to acknowledge that. You may have something that I want, but I have something you want. You want the cure to the pandemic, and I want you to do what I say, like good old Mercury, my slave boy. But I know that you won't, because you have to fight, and because you would easily stab me with a steak knife if the tables were turned, and if you had the chance. But they aren't turned, and I am the one in control. You don't even realize what you have done. You don't realize why we are having this funeral dinner anyway. I realize in this moment that I am confused. I don't know what Stryker is talking about, but Stryker just smiles at me. You want to know, don't you? He says. I don't want to know anything, I say, taking a bite of the vegetables. I don't want to know anything that you have to say. I don't believe you. It's too late, Stryker says, and that is when I see that we are no longer inside of the day room, but walking through the forest that I was in when they said that I committed suicide. Walk with me to see the truth, Stryker says to me. You think you are so in control of all of this. You think that you have all the power in the world, that you are a real hotshot, but you don't know anything. You don't know anything about how all of this functions. Now that you have seen that bloody steak just taste like dust in your mouth, and you're seeing all of this as a mere elaboration on something much deeper, something that you didn't understand about yourself, you are a fool. I don't know what we are doing here, but the strange vibe of the dinner party has given way to the violence of myself, something that I have done to myself, but I don't know yet what that is. This is the forest where I supposedly committed suicide, but I didn't. I didn't commit suicide. I'm still here. I didn't die. But Stryker is leading me through the forest saying, I already know everything about you, Dark Kid. I know everything. You can't surprise me. I want you to see the truth of what you have done. I want to see the truth too. So yeah, that's the chapter. Yeah.
Snapping noises. That was really good.
Very mysterious.
Yeah,
I'm very curious now.
You know, Dark Kid seemed a little more vulnerable than I remember him being in Street Kid. I don't know. and I know that he's like the mirror image of Street Kid, I guess, in many ways. But he seemed awfully vulnerable compared to how he was in that other book.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but you have read The Street Kid, and one of the reasons for that, I would say, based off the mythology, is because the Street Kid imagines the Dark Kid as being like super like confident, always has his shit together, cool. But in reality, in the Dark Kid's perspective, it's much more complicated because for a variety of different reasons, including the violence of the world and kind of his own backstory. So
from Dark Kid's perspective, is he seeing Street Kid as someone who's malevolent, or is he experiencing it the same way as Street Kid is, and he's living out this, this meanie, basically being mean to Street Kid? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so based off the mythology, I don't want to give too much away, but I would say that in general, the Dark Kid respects the Street Kid. So their friendship is still pretty solid. And that was intentional because their relationship is really important in the overall arc that I've been building.
Would reality fall apart if these two didn't exist? Like the reality you write in, would it fall apart without them?
I think my reality would.
That's what I mean.
Well, because I think I mentioned that. Yeah, the Dark Kid was obviously inspired by Jack Sawyer, but as I was writing the book, he became a completely different character.
Jack Sawyer from Stephen King's.
Yeah.
The Talisman or the Black House?
The Talisman. It would be from the Talisman. The Black House didn't influence me as much.
I still have not read the Talisman. I know it's like you gush about it. The Talisman gets mentioned on here when you're around as much as like House of Leaves gets mentioned by everybody else. Those two books, I swear, man. Yeah. They must be really great.
Well, I obviously wasn't only influenced by the Talisman, but it probably is my favorite book. I mean, I have to give it credit for how much it influenced me. And it had a head start because I read it as a kid. But yeah, I mean, it's been really influential.
Anybody know what happened to Gregor?
I probably had to go, and either his internet either he had to go or his internet just kicked off to the point he didn't bother trying to get back on. Right.
Nothing happened that would have lit him up or anything. I know. So okay.
He's not the kind to get lit up very easily. You don't need to worry about that.
It's not like we don't have enough people here. Chad.
But